Round here, you want to go deep. So that's why you need the podcast.
Hey, hand me my guitar. Oh, yeah, there we go. That's the stuff. You may not believe this. I didn't learn to play till this morning. You know Clepper in the morning. He plays your favorite country tunes every day. But this is his podcast. Alan after the music stops. I think he's going to be pissed. This doesn't even rhyme. But it doesn't have to, because it's podcast jingle. For Alan, it's all the stuff he couldn't talk about. And I'm not even getting paid. It's the podcast. The Clepper After Breakfast Podcast.
Catch the latest episode right now.
Anywho, here's Alan.
Hey, we are talking with Wade Burleson, candidate for U.S. House District 3 in the U.S. Congress. Wade, how are you?
Alan, I'm doing well, and frankly, sitting in your office here, I need your autograph. 10 Oklahoma Association of Broadcast Awards. You are like the star, and it's good to be with you today on this podcast and radio interview.
So, I appreciate that.
You bet.
I want to ask you right off the bat, if you win, what are you going to do the day after the election? What are you going to be doing?
Well, Alan, I can win. It's up to the Lord. Mm-hmm. The day after, I will just frankly say I'm more comfortable not winning because I'm not running for myself. But in my gut, I feel like I could win because it's a call. And if I do, I'll be thinking about our country. I'll be thinking about Oklahomans. And my wife and I will be talking about what we do now to fight for Western Oklahoma. She'll be taking that day off. Mm-hmm. If we do win, Alan, I'll tell you this, it'll be a shock to a lot of people. And it could be national news because you're replacing a 28-year incumbent, and it will send a message to the nation that people are wanting change, even in the Republican Party.
Yeah. On a personal note, I love Frank to death. I love you to death. Both great Christian men. But you said this in the forum, and I probably should let you say what you said about Frank. You differ in how you would handle things.
Oh, absolutely. Frank is a Christian man. He needs to be honored for his 28 years of service. I texted him when I decided to run February of this year. He's the first person I texted other than my family. He immediately called me back. And he said, Wade, why are you running? And I gave him 12 reasons, but I made him a promise. I said, Frank, I will never denigrate you as a person. You love the Lord, you love your country, you love your church, you love your family, you love your state. You should be honored for the service that you've given. But, and Alan, this is what you're going to, a voting record is a public record, and I would handle things much differently. I would vote significantly more conservatively in terms of standing on conservative principles than what Frank has done. But I reminded Frank, that's not personal. It's not personal. People can vote differently and still be friends. And Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan were best of friends. We'd go out and have dinner together. But they had diametrically opposite views of what should be done for our country. And I personally believe the way I would represent Western Oklahoma would be more in line with the values of the people who live here than what Frank has done. Now, he does present himself to us as conservative, and he is. The problem is he votes more liberal than I would vote, and that's seen, Alan, in the conservative ranking agencies. It's not me. I'm not just saying this because I'm running. I mean, we're talking about Club for Growth. We're talking about a nonprofit for government against a nonprofit against government waste. They rank him 58%, 60%, 61% in terms of his lifetime voting record. So I'm running to be a more conservative representation for Western Oklahoma.
It is a mess out there, not only in the state but nationally. Is it fixable?
You know, I tell people this. One person can't change everything, but here's the deal, Alan. I've had experience. I was elected twice as the Southern Baptist Convention president for Oklahoma. I stood on the floor 15 years ago and made a motion to track sexual predators in our convention. I made that motion before 20,000 people. Everybody thought I was a nut. And they're like, wait, what are you doing? Stop. Well, 15 years later, after 2 horrible newspaper investigations and a $4.5 million professional investigation, the recommendation that came out, which was adopted 3 weeks ago, was exactly what I said we should do 15 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm saying that I may not be able to push through what needs to be done, but I promise you this, I will not be quiet. And from Washington, D.C., I will shout from the top of roof houses. I will go on television, radio, and I will tell people, you better wake up. This is what I'm doing. It was voted down. You better wake up and realize your country is being taken from you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one thing you'd like to start with first to what do you think's the short-term fixes? That may be a long-term fix you just described.
Short-term fix. I will do everything I can within days to author legislation to force the Chinese Communist Party to get out of northwest Oklahoma. They own 300,000 acres worth of prime farmland, and they've bought it. Contrary to the Constitution of Oklahoma, foreigners cannot invest in private land in Oklahoma. But they violate that by establishing blind shell corporations, using Americans to purchase this land, and then a lot of them are growing marijuana on it. So I will author legislation, foreign entities using shell corporations to purchase prime northwest Oklahoma farmland have 60 days to sell it, or it will be seized by the state of Oklahoma and sold to the highest bidder of a citizen of the state of Oklahoma or the United States. And it's not just China. It's any foreign country. But right now, it's China that is controlling the farmland of the United States. That's the first. Second, border security. I will do everything I can within my power to finish that wall that Mr. Trump started. My first trip when I get to Congress, and it may even be before I'm sworn in, I will go to Florida, and every single person arrested without due process and imprisoned for the protest on January 6th that has not been able to have a day in court, I will go there, and in the authority of the Constitution and as a congressman, I will go in and I will say, listen, I have not forgotten about you. It is absurd that we are putting people in solitary confinement without due process. Even if they're guilty, they should have their day in court, and I am against the tyranny that has come against them.
All right, now I'm going to turn the clock way back.
Okay.
Wade, tell me about you. Where are you from? Where were you born?
You know, I was born in Oklahoma City,
Okay.
1961. Baptist Hospital had opened in 1959. It had only been open 2 years. My dad was a pastor. He eventually pastored the largest and fastest growing evangelical church in Texas when I was in high school.
Okay.
Yep. Graduated, played football, Southwest High School, went to Baylor University, met my wife. We married, and then I moved to Oklahoma. Was called to be pastor of a church in Holdenville. Then I went to Tulsa when I was very young, 24, became chaplain for the Tulsa Police Department, pastored an inner city church in Tulsa, and then in 1992, Emmanuel Enid, an incredible church, called me to be pastor. I was 29 years old. My wife and I moved here. I'd seen some dark things happen at night in Tulsa, and it's really not fair to judge the city of Tulsa by what I saw, but because of what I saw, I wanted to raise my children in a small community like Enid, and I do not regret it. So I've pastored, Alan, the same evangelical church for 30 years. I retired in January, and I tell people if you can pastor the same Southern Baptist church for 30 years, you can definitely be in Congress. When I retired, my wife, who has her doctorate in nursing from Vanderbilt University, and as you know is the chief nursing officer at our local regional medical center, she and I bought a building personally at the corner of Highway 412 and 81. And my two good friends, Charlie Kirk from California and Dinesh D'Souza from Houston convinced me that I could make a living full-time writing and podcasting, and that's what I was going to do in my most productive years. I just turned 60 last year. I was going to write and podcast from our studio that my wife remodeled, and then I was approached to run for Congress. And so February of this year, my wife convinced me that I should run, and I announced that I was running for United States Congress District 3, and Alan, Rochelle and I, have had the time of our lives traveling all of Oklahoma, 33 counties, western Oklahoma, half the state, and getting to know people and letting people know why I'm running for Congress. And I have to say, Alan, the other night at the debate at the Stride Center, you came up to me and you asked a very penetrating question. Mm-hmm. You asked me. In fact, I'll let you ask me.
And that was going to be the next question. Yeah. Because I'm a Christian and we grow every day, hopefully. And one of the things that I've really been curious about is why you are leaving the ministry to be a politician. And that's almost an unfair way of saying it. But the Christian way of asking would be, what did you hear from God that told you that you had done everything you needed to do at Emmanuel, and now it's time to do something different?
Alan, it's a great question. And by the way, I want to ask you a follow-up question.
Okay.
You personally.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous question. Let me say very clearly, it is a step down for me.
Okay.
To serve the kingdom, to serve the Lord Jesus Christ, it's the highest honor that I've ever had. I did it for 40 years. Moses, 40 years is a great biblical number.
That is yeah.
It is. For 40 years, I was a pastor, from 1982 to 2022. And as I told you the other night, Alan, God removed the pastoral spirit in my heart and the call to be a pastor, and He placed within me a prophetical spirit and a call to be a prophet. And you cannot have a call to be a prophet and be a successful pastor, because a prophet is not welcome in his hometown. That's what Jesus said.
Sure.
And so I set aside my pastoral work, and I was going to write about the issues facing our nation, and I was going to speak about them. But then people said to me, Wade, you need to run for Congress. And so I am. And all I can say is simply this. I know I'm in the center of the will of God for my life, even though it's a step down, because at this stage in my life, He has called me to speak to the nation truth in order to save our country. We are in an existential crisis. What that means is it's a crisis that revolves around the existence of our nation. And I think God has called me to do what I can to defend this nation.
We also talked about, I think what we were talking about was the separation of church and state.
Yes.
That's the short answer to what we talked about. Talk to that a little bit about how we have this gigantic move within the Christian church of if you don't know Jesus, I'm going to beat it into you until you do, and if you don't agree with me and you're not the same belief as I am, you're wrong, I'm right, and so you got to believe. I'm pretty sure Jesus didn't say it that way.
Jesus did not say that.
Yeah.
In fact, Alan, you know, it's interesting. I used to be called a liberal by many in the convention and in the state because I removed the United States flag from the auditorium of Emmanuel. And now they called me a flaming fundamentalist, a Christian nationalist. And I'm like, guys, make up your mind.
Yeah, you can't be both.
No,
yeah.
I'm the same man that I was 40 years ago. I live by principle. So, Alan, here's what I say. There is a separation of church and state. The reason we didn't have the United States flag in our auditorium is because when you're a member of the kingdom of Jesus Christ, which is the eternal kingdom, you can be a citizen of Poland, a citizen of Russia, a citizen of Canada, a citizen of the United States, or China, and you're a member of the kingdom. So here, what I said was this. Rather than having just one national flag, why don't we have all the flags of the nations? And I was working toward that, flying all the flags of the nations in our parking lot, because that's the kingdom from every nation, every tribe, every kindred, every tongue. And the idea that Christians are only a citizen of the United States is absolutely foreign to the teaching of Scripture. Now, having said that, I stepped aside from being a kingdom man as a pastor, and now I'm running as a politician for the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you this the other night, and I want to be very clear, and I hope people listen carefully to me. The best leaders in the United States government are followers of Jesus Christ. They are the best leaders by far, bar none, and I am one. But we do not want a national government that reflects Christian values. Because if we did, when China bombed the West Coast, we'd turn our cheek and say, okay, bomb the East Coast. We'd release every single prisoner, no matter what they've done. We'd forgive them. Jesus came to release the prisoners. We would open up the borders and give to every single beggar whatever they ask without expecting anything in return. We'd let everyone come in. Okay, here's the deal. That's not the function of government. That's the function of the kingdom, the followers of Jesus Christ. And you know what's interesting, Alan, is my liberal Democratic friends, they want the national government to look like the Christian church. And my conservative friends, they want the Christian church to look like the national government. Separate them. Yeah. Make them different. The purpose of government, according to Scripture, is to punish the evildoer, to secure the borders. The sole purpose of the United States government is to ensure that the inalienable rights of American citizens are secure. And Alan, I use that pronunciation intentionally. Mm-hmm. Inalienable. What is a lien? When you have a lien, you have a car, but honestly, you've given rights to that car to someone else until you pay them back, like a bank. Inalienable means a right that cannot be taken or given away. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness come from God, not government. And government should secure those rights for us. So, Alan, I'm running as a politician for the government of the United States, and I want life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness to be secured. And to do that, you don't have to have a Christian government. You just have to believe in the Creator and the inalienable rights of the Constitution. Now I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
You told me this great story of being in Poland. And have you ever told that on radio before?
I've not told it on the radio. I've told it in 2 different churches.
Would you mind? I want to ask you the question because it's very compelling. Tell me, Alan, you speak of it as a conversion experience almost?
Mm-hmm. The short version of the story, because the long version would take me forever. Kyle, the boss man, asked me 3 different times to go to Poland and be involved in the ministry work that goes over there through the radio stations. And I kept telling him no, and I think the 4th time it was more of a twist my arm, you got to go. When I got over there, I understood why I went. I went over there to show these Polish radio guys how to do radio the American way, because as you know, Wade, in Poland, if anybody was raised when the Iron Curtain was still there, they walk down the street with their eyes dropped and they don't make eye contact, right. And you don't ask somebody, how you doing? Right. That's an Okie thing. That is not a Polish thing at all. And so while I was there, I got to take a trip to Auschwitz, and our friend Shistov gave me the personal tour of Auschwitz that he gave you. Mm-hmm. During that time, and the whole time I'm there, I keep asking myself, why me? Why me? Why am I really here, God? And I was a little bit scared, being first time I'd ever been out of the United States.
Wow.
Ever. And I don't travel well. I'm just not geared that way. I like where I'm at. So we're in Auschwitz, and there's a room that has a map of the train station, and it has a bunch of the luggage with the names on the luggage.
I remember it.
And as I'm reading that luggage, it really came home to me about that these are really people. This guy's name and his children and his wife on that bag, these were real human beings that stood in this prison camp, not because they did something wrong or because they made a mistake or because they were stupid or anything like that, but they were fooled into coming there with their own free will to get there, and then getting to see all the heinous things that were done to them. And it's stuff that we can't even talk about on the air. It's so egregious. My head began to spin. I started getting lightheaded. I felt every emotion under the sun, and I see the exit door. I'm like, I'm out of here. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm gone. I'm done. I run out the door, and the weirdest thing, I run right into this group of soldiers. And this is absolutely a God thing. Why was there a group of Israeli soldiers in that courtyard, and all of them are crying because they're visiting Auschwitz for the same reasons everybody is? And I'm like, okay, God. And at this point, I'm just really freaking out. Shistov catches up to me and kind of puts a bear hug on me and is like, Alan, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? And I said, there is no way that the Jesus that I grew up to know in Northwest Oklahoma would ever die for these men.
Wow.
There's no way. My Jesus is not big enough to forgive this sin. I mean, I knew he was.
Right.
And Shistov looks at me, pulls back, stares me in the eyes, and he goes, now, my friend, you understand what real grace is about.
That's cool, Alan.
So, yeah, it was a conversion. I don't remember a time I've always believed in Jesus.
Right.
But I got to meet Jesus 3.0, I guess. I don't know how else to explain that.
Well, you know, Auschwitz, I've been there with my wife, and that story, Alan, I'm going to ask you a question because I am running for Congress. And this is a significant question. You and I have seen what the Nazis did to the girls, to the women, to the men, to the boys. Okay. We know Jesus died for sinners. The people who did these horrific things, that's the kingdom gospel, the kingdom message. Now the question is this. Do you ever believe God would place a call in the heart of an individual to stop that kind of evil from occurring?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's, to me, Alan, the prophetical heart. And even though we're watching on television these hearings about Trump and they're calling him a fascist, I write history books, Alan. Fascism in Germany was socialism. If you don't believe in God, a creator, and the laws of nature, then government is God. Science is the Holy Scriptures. And your hope is what government can give you rather than God. The Lord's Prayer is, give us this day, O Lord, our daily bread. But when you don't believe in a creator or a Lord, then government is to bring you your food. Alan, I am running because I see in the United States this intentional takedown of our trust in God, the removal of our republic, and in its place, there's a desire for socialism and communism, and I'm going to fight that with every fiber of my being.
Wade, I appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah, you bet.
We could talk for 2 or 3 hours. I'm telling you, we could just start chatting about things. But I appreciate you giving me this time, and don't forget about us little people if you win.
You know, Alan, Enid is my home.
Yeah.
We haven't had a congressman since Happy Camp. Next Tuesday, June 28th, if I'm elected, I will not forget about Enid. And people can call me personally on my cell phone, and I will fight for them to keep the government out of their businesses, their bank accounts, their backyards, and their bodies.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.